Hey, welcome back. As I help new gardeners, I try not to recommend that they purchase a bunch of products just to get started with their garden. In fact, there's only a few things that I even consider must-haves to have a successful vegetable garden here in the desert. But one thing I always encourage gardeners to invest in is a drip irrigation system with an automatic timer. Having a properly set up drip irrigation system can not only reduce your stress, but it can help you be a lot more successful in your vegetable garden. If you've never installed a drip irrigation system, or maybe you don't even know what that is, you're in the right place. In today's video, I'm going to discuss some common types of drip irrigation products, explain how they work, and I'll even show you how to plan and set up your very own drip irrigation system for your garden. Stick around. This is In the Garden. Setting up a drip irrigation system is a lot easier than installing something like sprinklers for a lawn. Drip irrigation can actually be attached directly to your hose faucet. It makes it really easy to install. You can bury it if you want to, but you don't even have to do that. You can install it all completely on top of the ground, and that makes it really simple for anyone to install this at home. If you head down to your local home improvement store or even shop online, you're going to find a whole bunch of different drip irrigation products. It might seem overwhelming, but it's really not that bad once you get to know what you're really going to need in your garden. So today I'm going to show you a few of the most common things that you should purchase that you can use to set up your drip irrigation system in your garden. The main part of your drip irrigation system is going to be the tubing. This is how the water is going to get from your faucet into your garden. There's several different sizes, but there's basically two sizes you're going to use in your garden. You're going to use a large size and a small size. The large size can be either a 1/2 inch or a 3/8 inch, and the small size is typically 1/4 inch. For the large size, it doesn't matter if you use a 1/2 inch or a 3/8 inch. It's whatever they have, whatever you want to purchase. But whichever size you decide on, you're going to want to make sure that you use that throughout your garden so that all your fittings and everything else will fit together properly. And this is what you're going to use for the main part of your drip irrigation system in your garden. This is what's going to get the water from the faucet and bring it back and into your garden and throughout your garden. The smaller size tubing, the 1/4 inch, is what you're going to attach to get to each individual plant. You can think of it kind of like a neighborhood where you have large water lines buried in the street, and then each house has a smaller water line that goes up to the house. If each of your plants was a house and then the main pipe is running down the street, you're just trying to get that to the general area of your plants, and then you're going to use your smaller 1/4 inch tubing to get to each individual plant. The little drip emitter heads is what you're going to use to water your plants. These are going to go at the ends of all your tubing right where your plant is. They come in different sizes, and by sizes I mean they let a different amount of water through. They're measured in gallons per hour, and they range anywhere from a 1/2 gallon per hour to 1 gallon to 2 gallons, and there's probably even larger ones than that. For your home garden, you can probably use the same size on all your plants. What I do is I use the same size throughout my entire garden, and then if a plant needs more water than another one, I'll put 2 drippers onto that plant instead of mixing up different sizes of drippers and having to keep track of which one has which size. So you have standard drip emitters, and these just attach right to the end of your 1/4 inch tubing, and it'll just drip whenever the system is running. You'll also find 1/4 inch connectors. These are what you're going to use to connect your 1/4 inch tubing to the larger tubing in your garden. These type of connectors also come in T's so that you can connect more than one 1/4 inch tubing to the same connector. There are additional things like bubblers and other kinds of drip heads. They even make sprayers and little sprinklers, but you're not going to want to use that in your garden. If you watched my video about how to properly water your garden, you'll know that spraying directly onto the leaves of the plants is not the best way. So you're going to want to avoid any kind of sprayers or sprinklers or any of those types of drip system parts. They also make what's called a goof plug. When you're putting your system together, you're pretty likely to poke a hole in your large tubing in a spot where you didn't really intend to have one, or where maybe you've changed your mind. And they make these little plugs, they're called goof plugs, and you can just pop them in wherever there's a hole that you actually didn't want or where you've moved something. So they're good to have just on hand in case you end up needing to fix a mistake you didn't intend. This is an adapter to connect your drip system to your hose faucet. One end has a standard hose threaded screw, and the other end is a compression fitting. The compression fitting would connect to the large size of your tubing, and you're just going to push it on until it's all the way snug against the top. These come in different varieties. Some of them are just compression, or this one has a little screw fitting that you can use to actually make sure it's held on there extra tight. You're also going to need to have a pressure reducer, and that's going to go between your faucet and your connector. That's going to reduce the pressure of your drip system so that things don't get blown apart. Your water pressure in your house is too high for your drip irrigation system, and the fittings, because they're just compression fittings, can get popped apart under high pressure. You want to make sure that you have that pressure reducer installed on your drip system. You'll see a lot of fittings like this one. This is a T, but they also just make couplers that allow you to put two pieces of tubing together. This one will allow you to split. They make ones that are elbows so that you can go around corners. There's a lot of different ones, so you just need to think about how you're going to lay out your garden and which ones you're going to actually need, and just purchase the ones that are the same size as the tubing that you're using. This is a shutoff valve, and it can be installed directly in line. You're going to cut your tubing, and you're going to install the tubing into each side of this, and then if you need to shut off an area or your whole system, you can actually use this, and you just turn it to the side and it'll shut off the flow to that area. These are good to have if you have different areas in your garden where maybe you want to water one more than another, or you have a certain type of plant in one area. This is just a splitter that can be attached to your hose faucet, and it'll allow you to connect your drip irrigation to one side and still have your garden hose connected to the other side. This is really helpful, and you don't have to keep disconnecting and reconnecting things to be able to use your hose or to water your garden. There's a lot of different tools that you can purchase to use for your drip irrigation system. There's only two that I think that you actually need, and these are the two that I have. One is a hole punch tool, and these come in a lot of different varieties, but one like this where it actually crimps onto the tubing when you poke the hole, this is actually my favorite type, and it's a lot easier to use than some of the other ones. So I would definitely recommend investing in a hole punch similar to this one. And then also just a tubing cutter. This is just a simple cutter so that you can cut the tubing. This works on both sizes, on the larger size and on the small size. So you just need one cutter for your whole system. The last product I want to talk about is the timer. Timers come in a huge variety, everything from small cheap mechanical timers to battery operated ones to ones that you need to hardwire into your house. I recommend just getting a cheap battery operated timer, and there's a few different varieties that work well. One of them that I used for many years is this one. You can see it is well loved. It just has these dials. You set it for how long you want it to run, how much the interval between each run, and it also has an option that if you want to turn it on manually for a few minutes at a time, you can do that as well. So this works really well. All these kinds of timers, they're just going to screw directly onto your hose faucet, and then you're going to connect your drip system to the other end. They're really simple to install. There's no gluing, no cutting pipes, nothing like that. These are really simple, kind of like a plug and play option for your drip system. A timer like this is considered an analog timer because you have these knobs. You're just going to set it to where you want it to be, and then it's going to run. It works really well. I was really happy with this one. This is a Rain Drip brand. It worked really well for a long time. It finally broke. I've probably been using it for 6 or 7 years, and it finally wore out, and I invested in a new one. My new one I invested in is actually a digital timer. This works pretty much the same way, except that it has a digital touchpad inside where you can set your settings that way. But it's basically the same concept. You set how long you want it to run, when you want it to run. You can turn it on manually. You can shut it off if it's raining and you don't need it to run at all. But this is a good option as well. The same way, it screws onto your hose bib on one side, and then you can actually attach your drip system to the other side. Now that I've gone over each of the products a little bit, I'm going to explain to you how you need to plan your drip irrigation system before you actually go out and buy anything. Before you start to install anything, you need to really plan. Pre-planning is key to having a good drip irrigation system in your garden. First, you need to think about where is your water source, where's your hose connection, or how are you going to connect to get the water into your drip system. Once you know where your water source is, you need to plan how you're going to get the water from there into your garden, and then also throughout your garden. That's where you need to think about using the large size tubing. You need to get from your hose connection to your garden and then throughout your garden. When I say throughout your garden, I basically mean from one end to the other, or into each area of it. You're not going to use this large size tubing to get to each individual plant. So you're just trying to get to the general area of all your plants. In my garden, the one you can see behind me here, I have the tubing come in from my hose faucet. it reaches my garden here, and then I run the large size tubing one line to the end. That gives me a water source throughout my entire garden, and then I use the small tubing to connect to each individual plant. So you need to think about the layout of your garden. Even writing it down on paper, drawing a picture of it is really helpful. If you draw it out on paper, you can see the shape of your garden, where things are, and you want to plan the shortest distance of using this large tubing to get throughout your garden. Not only is it more expensive to run more tubing all over the place, but it's just wasteful, it reduces pressure, it'll make your system less efficient. So you really want to think about how you're going to get the water to your plants in the shortest distance possible. Also think about areas where you might need to bury the tubing. In my garden, I have a walkway right here, so I want to make sure that no one's going to trip over it, it's not going to get damaged. So right from the hose bib, I bury it in the ground, and it comes over and it comes back above ground at my garden. That makes it so it's safe, no one's going to trip on it, the dogs aren't going to damage it. Because it's not a high pressure line and it's not permanently installed, you don't need to bury it feet underground. You could just bury it a few inches down, or even if you have like a rock covering or mulch, you can even just bury it under that, and that's going to be good enough to keep it from getting damaged or keep somebody from tripping over it. If you have a raised garden bed, a good tip is to bury it in the raised garden bed and actually dig it out under the side of the bed so that it can go in without having to drape over the side of the bed. Just like when doing something with woodworking or any kind of crafts, you always want to make sure you've measured correctly before you start cutting. But just make sure you're pre-planning out how you want to build it before you actually start doing it. So I've gone over some of the products with you, and I've explained that you need to make sure you plan out your irrigation system before you start installing. If you have that done, you're ready to go out and start putting it into your garden. So now I'm going to show you how to actually attach these different things and get them installed into your garden. The first thing we're going to do is connect our system to our hose faucet. The first piece that I like to put on is the timer. You're going to attach your timer directly to your hose faucet. You'll want to make sure that it is really tight on there so that you don't have any leaks. Before you go any farther, you'll want to make sure your timer is set off, and then turn on your water and make sure that you don't have any leaks. If you were going to be installing a splitter to be able to connect your garden hose also, you would want to put this on before the timer. So make sure you install this and then the timer to one end of this, and your garden hose can go onto the other. For this example, I'm not installing that, so I won't put it here. The next part is going to be to put together the actual pieces that are going to connect to the timer. You need to connect your hose adapter piece to your large size tubing. To do this, you're just going to put it on. You're going to push it on until you cannot push it anymore. And on this particular one, it has this screw piece, so I can screw that down to make sure it's extra snug. And you're going to want to pull it and make sure it's not going to pop back off. Next, you're going to want to install the pressure reducing coupling. This is going to allow the pressure to not be too high for your drip system. This is really important. You want to make sure you don't leave this piece out. You're going to install this directly onto your timer. Again, make sure that it's really tight and snug so you don't have any leaks. Inside of your fitting, you should also have one of these screens. This is important as it keeps little particles from getting into your drip system. The drip emitter heads have tiny holes and they can get clogged really easy with even just a little bit of stuff in there. So this screen will help to make sure that nothing is getting into your drip system. You also want to make sure that all the washers are installed on all these pieces. All these pieces should have a rubber washer, and that's going to make sure that it seals well and you don't end up with leaks. Once you have all that checked and you have all your washers, your coupling is installed, you're ready to install this adapter directly onto the pressure reducer. This is what your final setup should look like. Yours will look different, obviously, if your hose is set up a different way. Mine's got a weird angle on it, so it comes out sideways. But you will have your timer, your pressure reducer, and then your fitting to connect your hose into the system. After you have it connected to your hose faucet, you're going to run the large tubing throughout your garden. As you see in my garden, I just run it right down the center, and it goes throughout my entire garden to the end. And at the far end, I have it capped. Once you have your large line ran throughout your garden, you're ready to install the 1/4 inch line to each individual plant. In today's example, I'm going to be putting a 1/4 inch line to this bell pepper plant right here. The first thing you're going to want to do is determine where along the large line you want to connect. Then you're going to use your hole punch tool and you're going to punch a hole on the side of the tube towards the plant you're going to. As you can see, I poked a hole on this side towards the plant. The next thing you're going to do is measure out your 3/4 inch line to the length that you want it to be. Remember I said that you want to have extra on in case you need to adjust things later on. So you're going to measure from that hole and then to where you need it to be, and then add a few extra inches to it. Then you're just going to cut it off using your cutting tool. One thing I want to mention is that you should be really careful not to get dirt into any of the parts of your drip system while you're installing it. Little pieces of sand or rock or dirt can clog up an emitter and it won't function properly. So you just want to be really careful that when you're moving your tubes around and stuff, that you're not dragging them through the dirt where they're going to get full of stuff. Next, you're going to use one of the 1/4 inch adapting couplings to connect to one end of the 1/4 inch tubing. And to connect it, you're just going to put it and push it on. You want to make sure you push it on all the way until it hits the large piece where it stops. Now you're going to connect this other end of that connector into the large tubing. You're going to do it the same way, just push it in until it's all the way flush against the large piece. Now you're going to install the drip emitter to the other end of the 1/4 inch tubing. You're going to install it the same way you did the connector, just push it until it's flush against the big part. Now you're ready to position it onto your plant. You can use one of these little clips that'll clip onto the tubing, and then it'll stake in next to your plant to put it where you want it to be. As I mentioned in my watering video, you want to make sure you're watering at the base of the plant in the root zone. So you want to make sure you place this near the root of the plant. You're not going to put it far away where the water's never going to get to the plant. You're going to want to make sure you put it close. If you didn't watch that video about watering your plants, make sure you go back and watch it, as it has a lot of good information about the proper way to be watering your plants. That's it. Once you have that installed, that plant is ready to go. Your system is all installed. You have a drip line to each individual plant. The last thing you need to do before you actually use it is flush out the system. The last thing that you need to do before using your drip system is flush it out. To do this, you're just going to open up the end, whatever kind of end cap you put on the end of it after you ran it through your garden. You're going to open it or uncrimp it, however it was set up, and you're just going to leave it open on the ground. And then you're going to go and turn on the system. Once you've ran it for a few seconds, you're just going to make sure that nothing runs back inside of it, and then you're just going to close it back up again. This makes sure that there's no contaminants in the line, there's no pieces of gravel or rock or dirt that are going to clog one of your emitters, so that you'll have a lot less trouble with it. Now that you have it all set up, go ahead and try testing it and make sure it all works. I hope you got something from this video and you learned a little bit about drip irrigation systems. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button. And if you want to get more content like this to help you be successful in your backyard garden, make sure you subscribe so you can get all my latest videos. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.